So, what keeps a human being living when everything has been taken away? Not motivation, not comfort, not money, but meaning. This book is not theory written from a comfortable office. It was written by a man who survived some of the darkest moments in human history. And somehow, instead of leaving the world with hatred, Viktor Frankl came out with this one of the most powerful ideas I've ever read. People can survive almost anything if they still have a reason to live. I thought this book would just be another classic psychology book, but honestly, this book stayed in my mind long after reading it. It is painful, it is uncomfortable, but it might change the way you look at suffering, purpose, and life. So today we are talking about Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. This book is divided into two parts. The first part is Franco's experience surviving Nazi concentration camps during Holocaust. And the second part explains the psychological philosophy he developed from those experiences called logotherapy. The idea that the deepest human drive is not pleasure or success, but meaning. And what makes this book different from other self-help books is this. Franco is not speaking from comfort. He watched people lose families, lose hope, lose dignity, lose everything. And inside all that suffering, he started observing something terrifying but fascinating. Most people who emotionally collapsed fast were often the ones who lost all sense of purpose. Meanwhile, people who were physically weaker somehow kept going because they still believed that there was something waiting for them beyond suffering. Maybe a loved one, maybe unfinished work, maybe faith, maybe they simply believed that their suffering itself had meaning. That idea became the core of this entire book, and honestly, that's what makes this book hit so differently. Because when someone who survived that level of suffering talks about resilience, you listen differently. Okay, this is not motivational speaking. I would say it is survival wisdom written in blood, pain, and human experience. So let's talk about the powerful ideas in the book. Idea number one, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. This is probably the most famous line connected to the book. And after reading it, you understand why. Franco notes that humans can endure unimaginable pain if they still believe there is a meaning behind it. Think about that for a second. Two people can go through the exact same pain, but one breaks while the other survives emotionally. Why? Because one still sees purpose. And honestly, this applies far beyond suffering. People lose direction today because they wake up without meaning. They chase distraction, validation, temporary happiness. But this book suggests something deeper. Happiness is not something you directly chase. Meaning comes first, then fulfillment follows. That completely changed the way I see life. Idea number two, you always retain one freedom. This was probably the most powerful idea for me personally. Franco says, even in concentration camps where every freedom was stripped away, humans still possessed one final freedom. This is an incredibly uncomfortable idea because it removes excuses. It means life can hurt you. People can betray you, circumstances can crush you, but eventually there is still a decision. Who will you become because of this? That perspective really challenged me because most of us today lose emotional control over very small things. A bad day, an insult, failure, rejection. Meanwhile, Franco is describing people facing unimaginable suffering while still choosing compassion, dignity, or hope. That contrast hits hard. Number three, suffering is part of life. I think most of us have heard about this. Most people spend their entire life trying to avoid pain. But this book suggests something radically different. Franco says suffering itself can contain meaning. Not meaningless suffering, not glorifying pain, but the idea that how we respond to suffering shapes who we become. And honestly, this part stayed with me most because modern culture constantly tells us avoid discomfort, escape pain, numb yourself, distract yourself. But this book forces you to confront reality. Pain is unavoidable, loss is unavoidable, failure is unavoidable. The question is whether suffering destroys you or transforms you. And that's an incredibly deep message. Number four, success is not directly chased. This idea really surprised me. Frankl explained that happiness and success are side effects. They happen when someone dedicates themselves to something meaningful beyond themselves. And when I read that, I immediately thought about how many people today are obsessed with becoming successful, but they have no purpose underneath it, no mission, no deeper reason, just achievement for the sake of achievement. And eventually, that emptiness catches up. This book argues that humans are not fulfilled by comfort alone. We need meaning. And honestly, I think that's why this book still feels incredibly relevant decades later. This book genuinely humbled me. There are books that you enjoy, and there are books that quietly change the way you think afterwards. This book was one of them for me. While reading it, I kept catching myself complaining internally about very small things in life: stress, delays, frustrations. And then I would return to Frankl describing life inside concentration camps. Not in a dramatic way, not emotionally manipulative, but calmly, almost clinically. And somehow that made it even more powerful because Frank wasn't trying to shock the reader. He was trying to understand humanity. What really stayed with me was this realization: a meaningful life is not necessarily an easy life. And I think many people today confuse comfort with fulfillment. This book completely separates the two things. One can suffer but still have a meaning. One can struggle and still have purpose. One can lose almost everything and still remain spiritually alive. That perspective honestly changed the way I look at difficult moments. Not perfectly, but differently. And I think that's a sign of a truly powerful book. It changes your lens. Now, to keep this review balanced, there are a few things a reader might struggle with. First, this is not an emotional read. Some concepts are deeply heavy because of the historical reality behind them. Second, if you are expecting modern fast-paced self-help style book with constant motivation, this is not that. The writing is reflective, philosophical, and emotionally dense. And the philosophical concept in the second half may feel slower for readers who enjoy storytelling. But honestly, I think the seriousness is part of what it makes this book impactful. It is not supposed to be consumed quickly and forgotten the next day. It is a type of book that forces reflection, and that's rare. For me personally, this is a 9.5 out of 10, not because it is entertaining in traditional sense, but because it is meaningful. And ironically, that's exactly what it teaches. I genuinely believe that everyone should read this book at least once in their life, especially during difficult moments, because it reminds you that meaning can still exist in suffering, and that message feels timeless. So overall, Man's Search for the Meaning is more than a psychology book. It's a book about survival, about purpose, about human resilience. It forces you to ask difficult questions. What gives my life meaning? Who am I when life becomes painful? What keeps me going? And honestly, few books leave that kind of impact. If you have read this book, Man's Search for Meaning, I would genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Did it change your perspective too? And if you enjoy deep book reviews like this, like and subscribe for more reviews that will challenge the way you think about life, success, psychology, money, and personal growth. Thanks for watching. Till next time, see you in my next video. Bye.